For me, to be a leader is the ability to help another become as competent as they possibly can. It is driving the show, leading the train, leading the team, but it's not barking orders. It is really instilling in others and pushing them to their competency level, something they never knew they had, in order to make the team that much better.
You're listening to the Woman of Value podcast. You are about to hear the story of a woman who is following her dreams and passions and creating positive change in the world. My guest today is Jenna Capozzi. She brings over 30 years of C-level executive experience, having led innovative projects for global brands like Samsung, Target, and BMW. And she has produced notable films and TV shows. Transitioning from the spotlight of Hollywood to empowering the next generation of leaders, she guides people toward impactful leadership. Her mission is to nurture leaders ready to make a significant difference. Committed to the idea that leadership and purpose are crucial for lasting change, Jenna aims to support emerging leaders in making a meaningful impact by building an audience and assisting other people on their journey. Welcome to the podcast, Jenna.
Thank you so much. I love hearing my bio repeated back to me. It's like, oh, who is that? Who did all that stuff?
She's a pretty cool lady, right?
Wow, I like her.
Right? Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Well, we always start with the question, what does a woman of value mean to you, Jenna?
Yeah, the first thought that came to mind was my mother. And we lost my father when I was 2 years old. So very much a matriarchal family. And my mom always saw future. She always saw what could be. And as an entrepreneur herself, she taught and instilled those ideas in me. So when I think of a woman of value, I think it's of someone who can see the future and can work towards something, who's willing to take responsibility and lead others, and really know her own self-worth. Because the definition of self-confidence truly is when you set out to do something and you do it, you start feeling more confident. So what I love to keep my attention on is on the future and what I'm going to create. For some reason, that just makes me feel more sane instead of worrying about all the problems of like today and present, where it makes me a little neurotic. Or if we think about the past, it can make you a little psychotic. But when you really focus on future and what could be, and that responsibility to help and make change, that's where I see women of value. And honestly, I found that there are very few women that have disappointed me this lifetime. And I've been a little more disappointed by some men, but I found my women friends are the ones I can truly, truly rely on and are very loyal, even though my husband's wonderful and we have a fantastic relationship. There's just something a bit different about my female friends and what they set out to do.
Well, nobody has ever shared that their mother was the example of woman of value. And I love that your mother was not only the matriarch, she was the only parent for you for most of your life, which had to have been hard, but to do something entrepreneurial and not take the safe route is quite impressive.
Yeah, in my family, it was if you decided to become a doctor or a lawyer, then you would be outed. You had to become an artist or somebody out of the box. That was the rule in my house. So it was very different. My mom lived in a legit tree house. So everything was very out of the box. It was not a normal childhood.
It sounds kind of like how I raised my children, actually. My ex-husband is a comedian and puppeteer, and we had a TV show together. My kids were raised in the home of an artist and a puppeteer comedian. And so if they had turned out to be lawyers or doctors, we would have been shocked. Of course, none
Yeah.
of them are. They are all artistic in some way. And whether it's drama or art, physical, drawing, painting. My oldest was a fashion designer for a while. Then she became a pastry chef and did the whole decorating thing. Yeah, so it's fascinating. I think we definitely mimic or we're raised by parents who have a philosophy and a value system. And so we do what we learn and it becomes normalized. Whereas I think a lot of people being an entrepreneur is so
Mm.
to make a living doing my own thing, and it takes time to build a business. So, in your family, I'm curious if there were a lot of naysayers who told you, just even though, do the entrepreneurial thing, but also like wanting you to stay safe.
Well, so after my father passed, my mother went to go work for my uncle, who was a very famous jazz singer. His name's John Hendricks from Lambert, Hendricks and Ross back in the day of New York. And so my childhood was spent traveling the world, being in nightclubs, being around, Uncle Dizzy was Dizzy Gillespie, Uncle Miles was Miles Davis. Like I was around this world. And what I saw, what my uncle did was he really helped other artists. He was a leader in his own right. He was also Black and he married a white Jewish woman in 1958. And so we had, all of that coming into play. And so just the environment I grew up in was always to be a disruptor and to be defiant. So that really lent itself to that sort of quality of life of being an entrepreneur. When I did first start, there were two family members that were definitely the most conservative family members, the wealthier family members who I'd gone to see if they wanted to invest in my very first company, which was in 2007. And it was, you'll never make it. You'll never do this. How can you even think? Why did you leave your job on the TV show? Why did you leave doing this? And what I saw and what was sort of my driving purpose was that when I worked in film and television, which I loved, it's 100-hour weeks. And I was now 34, 35 years old. And I was going, how am I going to have children? How am I going to have a family? How am I going to find a husband? How am I going to make all that work and juggle everything else that was important to me? I started volunteering in my mid 30s, really helping out other people with literacy or with drug situations, honestly, because I myself had a big drug problem in my 20s. So it became a passion of mine to help people. And I was like, there's no way I can work in that environment and do this. So, yes, I had the naysayers, but since I'm a competitive person, it was so great to prove those naysayers wrong. And within the first year, I did $650,000 in revenue and I was pregnant. So I definitely put the little like stamp on that one and just sort of, crushed it. But that was about it.
That was a lot. You just shared.
Yeah. Yes.
So let's
Yeah.
unpack that a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there were a lot of pivotal moments in your life. So we're talking, first of all, being raised by not just somebody who's a performer, but I mean, in the environment of a performer,
Hmm.
but it was a performer who you also learned good values from. And I think that's a big difference because I met a lot of performers who did not have the greatest value system and did not admire them. So that I'm sure had a big influence on you because it sounds like when you had that kind of wake up call, I need to stop working 100 hours for other people and have a family if I want to have one. Then you started tapping into some of the passions, the volunteering, giving back to other people. And then you talked about making all that money when you were pregnant. So
Yeah.
take us back to some of those moments of like those transitional moments where you started to really come into yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I would say when I was quite young, there was a tremendous amount of stress in our family life, right? My mom would have a boyfriend or a different boyfriend, or this one stole money, or this one happened to have a drug addiction, and I had an older sister, and it was just nothing was very stable. It was very tumultuous, or we're traveling, or I'm in a nightclub at 3 a.m. And I remember being about 5 or 6 years old going, I don't feel very safe, and that I realized that I had to kind of depend on myself. Now that sounds very young to have that realization, but it definitely was in survival mode always. And then with my uncle and being around him, I would see the effect that he would create on his audience. So many times on a Friday night, I would go to the theater and he would take me up on stage. And I was this curly haired little Shirley Temple tap dancer type girl. And I remember this one very pivotal moment where I'm looking out at the audience and I'm seeing them elated. and just smiling and just happy, as if any worry in the world was just erased for that moment, that that artist was creating something and lifting them up. And I remember going, I want to do that. I want to lift up others. I want to raise up others. And that basic purpose has always stuck through in my life. So when I was making the choice of going into my own business, there was a purpose there, because what I created was a marketing content company to help small businesses be able to create content that they can promote their brand. This was like 2007 or so, but I had to have that purpose there. And at the time, it was interesting, and this might make you laugh, but I actually had to do like an hour seminar on why video was important in 2007. It was like all keywords and blogs at the time. You know what I mean? Now looking back, it's like you wouldn't do anything but video, you know? But that purpose and that through line, I believe, is what's always driven me through all of those steps, even in volunteering, even in giving back. You know, it was just a purpose of how do I uplift others? And that even transcends in today's new business and this purpose. It's still how do I uplift others? Hopefully I
Yeah,
answered
I
your
think,
question, but
yeah, you
yeah.
did. I think, what I'm hearing is knowing your why, knowing your purpose informs everything. And I even remember when I was a working artist, people would say, well, sometimes you're painting furniture and sometimes you're doing calligraphy and sometimes you're doing other things. And I would say, as long as I'm creative, I don't care how it's interpreted, how it comes out. I need to be creative every day. And that was what drove me and my mission for a very long time. And even as a coach, creativity is a thread that runs through it, but also the leadership skills that I didn't even know I had were under there. And I remember when I went back to school and I became a coach, and one of my coaches kept saying, "You're a leader." And I did not believe her, because I thought leaders had to look and be different than I was, and they had to be louder, and they had to be the oldest in the family. And, so when I'm sure you come across many people who doubt their own leadership or don't know what is a true leader. Well, how do you define leadership?
For me, to be a leader is the ability to help another become as competent as they possibly can. It is driving the show, leading the train, leading the team, but it's not barking orders. It is really instilling in others and pushing them to their competency level, something they never knew they had, in order to make the team that much better and have the team win. It's why being a coach is just very natural for me as a leader, because that's what I do. Help others find it within them so that they can go and lead as well. And that's what I'm building as leaders. And you probably run into this in your business as well. It's like people don't even know that they have a leadership quality. A mother is naturally a leader. If you think about it, you're running the show, you're the CEO of that family, right? You are leading them, you're guiding them, you are making your children be the best version of themselves. You're helping your mate, you're helping, that is leadership. Anybody who decides to take responsibility, I don't care if it's for one person, two people, or thousands of people, you're still being a leader. So that's what it really means to me, is how do I push that competency level? And I think I found it really, like, I found it pretty young, because I played soccer, and I make a lot of references to soccer because we had to be a team of 11, and we had to have one ball, and taking the ball from one person to another is communication, because you have to transfer that ball and create a play in order to achieve a goal, which is to score a goal you know? And so I had to learn that very young, and we were very good. I even played on the US soccer team when I was 16 and toured all through Europe playing. But that's where it started. I could see when I would show up to the team and I wasn't feeling the best, or I didn't have the best mood, that the team would go down. I was like, wow, I'm really affecting that on the team. Where if there was another player who kind of came in with a bad attitude, she didn't affect the team. And so I was realizing that I sort of naturally had this leadership skill. Anyways, that's what I think. It's like, really, how do you get others to be the best version of themselves? To me, those are the leaders I admire.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people think leadership is controlling other people, or booming your voice out. And yeah, I mean, And yeah, as you were talking before, I was thinking about parenting. It is
Mm.
the ultimate leadership. And our kids, we want them to be the best versions of themselves, and we want to give them the skills that they need to get there and not do it for them, but teach them how to fish and how to cook and how to do all the things. And it's always interesting because my ex and I had very different ways of parenting, and it was so important to me to coach them and not
Mm.
do it for them.
Yes.
And I remember when my son, who's now 33, I
Hmm.
think he was about 16, and he said, I used to hate when you would make me like clean up after myself or cook, or you didn't let me go see every movie that was out. You controlled certain parts of my life. But I really appreciate it now because I know how to do things my friends can't do. Like he had a friend who couldn't turn the microwave on. He had a nanny who did everything for him, and the kid still today is struggling, even though he's a young father, he's married, but he's so dependent on other people for his validation of who he is instead of sourcing it from within. And I think, the best thing we can do is to help people source it from within.
What invalidation from your son. Hopefully that's in store in my future. My son's almost 16. I had kids late. I had my daughter at 45, and she's 7. And it's just that is a great validation because I look at it as I got to teach them the life skills. Both my children can cook. They can both do their laundry. We do a family clean up the house on Sunday and putting that organization in. I talked to my son, I got to get you off the payroll, like start getting a job. Like I do run it like a company, of course, with love, but at the same time, like him learning that of what's needed and wanted of him to contribute to this group as a leader, that's important for me to do. And that's running good control. Because when there's good control, people do very well. They're not confused. They're stable. They can go, oh, great, I do this. And then that's the next thing I do. And that's the next thing I do. Where bad control is when you're just barking and it's this confusion and dispersion and no one can do right or get better. And that's where I think there's confusion on leadership and how you actually execute it.
Yeah, and having been brought up in a chaotic environment yourself, you know what it's like without anybody steering the ship, like,
That's right.
having a kid without rules, without guidelines. I run a large Facebook group and I have very strict guidelines, and people don't always like them, but then they're invited to leave or they're kicked out, you know, but it's clear,
Yeah.
this is the way we run our group. And for most people, they feel safe there because
Yeah.
somebody's paying attention and cares. And
Yep.
most of the things that are run out there are chaotic. They're not led, they are not supervised, and people don't feel good when they're in an environment where nobody really has stated what is the mission here? What are we trying to achieve? If you have ever played small to make other people feel comfortable, or maybe stayed in a bad relationship or job too long because you didn't think you could do any better, I wrote a book for you. It's called Becoming a Woman of Value: How to Thrive in Life and Love. Each of the 30 chapters contains a life lesson, a story, and an exercise to bring you closer to reaching your full potential. Becoming a Woman of Value is available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. Tell us a little bit about the company that you created. I know that you've transferred from company to company and transitioned and moved a lot, but yeah, tell us like where you were
Yeah.
and where you are and what's going on.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, I started my first company, which was Capozzi Productions, and we were a media content company. Most of my clients were, in the 10 to $20 million range. So they couldn't really afford a big ad agency with, $300,000 a month retainers. You know what I mean? But they still needed high quality content. And so that was my niche. And things were going extremely well and swimmingly. And as I was hitting my 16th year, 2020 occurred, and there was, as we all know, a shutdown. And I had many shoots set up. I had one in the Caribbean the following month, But when you can't be on set and you can't be filming content, uh-oh, what do you do? Luckily, no joke, 5 days after the shutdown, I got a random call from Sony Pictures. And they said, hey, would you be interested in producing a team? And I said, sure, where is it? And they said, Dallas, Texas. And I said, funny, I just moved to Dallas a month ago. Like literally somebody was following me on LinkedIn and I, do my posts or whatever. And so I came on to figure out how do you virtually film? How do you virtually keep it going? And it was for a company called Funimation, which is now taken up by Crunchyroll, which is the largest distribution of anime content on the planet. And we had to do, Comic Cons were a big thing in the anime world and Marvel world, where people would get together and they didn't want to stop doing that. So I had to figure out with the team how to come up with a virtual Comic Con and in just 4 months. And we did it. And we had 68,000 people attend around the world. And it was, you should have seen my office in my house was a command center. I had like 4 screens and I had, remote teams all over and filming and it was a total success. We won an experiential award for that. And really the win for me was that I got 68,000 people to attend. I'm like, wow, clearly I know how to get an audience. This works. And then from there, I went on to work at an ad agency local in Dallas, and the main client was Samsung. And it was a great team. I absolutely loved it. I adored it. But I would take little consulting jobs here and there. And there was an entrepreneur in Florida who basically had been wanting to get me to work for him for 6 months. And I kept saying no because I like Texas. And then he said, name your price. And I named a very large price, thinking there would be no way. And he said, fine. And I said, oh, crap. Okay, I have a decision to make. And so we decided to go for it. Well, after doing that for a bit, I had just turned 51 and I was kind of going, God, man, I'm just really not fulfilled. You know, I'm helping this person out. I just helped him make $3.7 million in 6 months, like doing all the things that I know, and that's great. And he's paying me well, but I've never really worked for someone before. I always worked for myself, or I would do a movie or a TV show, which is a gig. You do it for a short amount of time and you move on to the next gig. But I was very unfulfilled. And I remember driving in my car and sort of resting my head on my hand and thinking, I am really bored. How do I want the next 50 years to go? All of a sudden, like a light bulb, Sandy, it was just like this memory of 2016. I was in the Caribbean. I had just done a lot of personal, spiritual work with myself. And I remember looking out on the ocean, as you do when you have some of these aha moments. And I was like, I want to help others, like all the time. That's really where I feel the best. When I see somebody have their own aha moment, when I see somebody come out of their skin and excel, be a communicator, be a leader, help others. And so as I was driving there, holding my head in my hand, I thought, this planet's not doing so well. There's a lot of upsetting things that happen in social media if you pay attention to that stuff and the news and this, and it's just a bunch of noise. And I feel like if we're really going to impact change, I need to help cultivate or create or provide the tools for leaders who are sane and have more leaders out there. Social media ain't going away, but let's get a lot of people on those bullhorns, and those loudspeakers saying a lot of positive stuff and a lot of sane stuff. How do you really raise your children? Or how do you go out there? Let's share more positivity. Let's help each other out locally. And I thought, that's what I'm going to do. So I quit my job and I started fresh. And the other thought I had was, I really like to travel and I really like to have a good time. And there's nothing better than a group of women on a weekend away having a good time when everything lines up. So I said, I'm going to do it through retreats. So that's what I do is I take a group of women and we go on retreats on different topics and we get products. I'm not there to just inspire. I actually help them execute and get their online course done or get their free gifts done or get their social media campaigns, all those things that I know how to do. We get busy on our sort of quote unquote workations.
So you had that light bulb moment and then you went ahead and started doing this leadership's work, which
And it
must
wasn't
be
yeah, and it wasn't easy. I mean, I left a pretty fat paycheck with no like reserves because we had just bought a house and my husband was just he was just let go from his job. So May of last year, neither one of us had a job. And it was, wow, what do I do? And I just started studying. I started studying Grant Cardone. I studied, Seth Godin. I studied, you know, all these like how to do story, all these things to validate what I do know or what I don't know, or how to take this really online or how to reach the most amount of people. And I combined it with already what I was doing, but keep in mind what I was doing, I had a lot of money behind me. I had, Samsung $6 million budgets, you know what I mean? A full market research team. How was I going to do this as a solopreneur? How was I going to do this on my own? And I just had to dig in, and it got a little scary, I'll be honest. November of 2023, it was the second week in November, and I had $21 in my bank account, Sandy. $21. And I'm like, Christmas is coming. Guess I should do a webinar. And I did one, and I made $9,000. So I did one the following week, and I made $7,000. So I did another one. I made like $4,000. It was getting close to Christmas. I took Christmas off, and I just kept going. And part of the reason why I was so successful is I know how to do marketing. I know how to do the research. I know how to find the buttons. I know how to do the hooks. And by the end of January, I had profited $100,000 in my company. And I was like, wow, my self-confidence went through the roof. I can't believe in less than a year, I changed it. Like it literally makes me tear up a little bit because I was like, wow, I did it. I saved my family. I like made a change. I'm helping people. So
Amazing.
and I'm emotional. I'm in my 50s having menopause, but that's how that goes. But wow, the self-confidence. And I lost 30 pounds at the same time. I lost weight. I was like, wow, when you really are doing what you're meant to do, it all just kind of lines up right.
Yeah, wow. It's energizing. I mean, just inspirational to hear your story. I just feel like so many people give up and feel like a victim and say, well, it's the economy and it's this and it's that. And I mean, I got divorced in 2007 and I was trying to start a business. I had just started my certification program. I bought a house. I had 3 kids to support. I had an emotional mess to deal with. And
Yes.
I did like 5 different jobs until I could get the coaching off the ground. But there are things that we can do. It's like the difference between me going to work at Starbucks, which is what everybody wanted me to do because they paid your health insurance, and doing what I was passionate about and having the faith that if I just keep doing step after step, that it will be okay. And I recently just had the same thing. Like it was very slow at the beginning of this year, and I said, oh, I have this communications course that I haven't taught in 2 years because I've been focusing on the dating courses that I teach and working one-on-one with people and my group coaching. And I just said, you know what? I love teaching communication skills. It's such an important thing. And I did a webinar last night and I sold 5 courses within, the hour. So
So
it's,
awesome.
yeah. And it's like if you look at yourself and say, what is the value that I bring? And we all have value, we can find ways to market it. And if we can't do it ourselves, we hire people. You were talking also about the people that you studied. We don't just do this on our own. I mean, I think good leadership is also knowing who to reach out to and who to learn from, because you can admit that I'm not great at everything, and especially coming out of the gate. Like I've led retreats, they're not easy. There's a lot of organization involved, and but they're amazing. Like it's such a fulfilling thing to do.
Yep. And I was just, as you were talking, I was like, that's the value of a woman, is also that persistence. Because if you had given up, you know what I mean? Like, and I equate it to childbirth. Like, you can't give up mid delivery. You know what I mean? Like, you got to go all the way with the thing. It's the same thing, that hardship, that persistence. That's something I do. And it's not that I don't see that in men. I absolutely do. But I definitely really admire women, especially you, where you were a divorcee and you're doing it on your own and you have the 3 small kids. And it's like all that. It's like, it's almost like the problems need to be big enough that it just is like, okay, let's go for it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And let's just make it work. It was like when I remember when I saw the bank account at $21, I was like, oh, well, I guess I have a big enough problem now to solve.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
clearly I wasn't doing it when there was $20,000 in the account. So,
Right.
okay, well, here we go. It was the push. And I
Yeah.
think also one of the things I had to work through, and I think this is very common with most women, I'm curious to know how this is for you, is that perfectionism thing. I just did a post recently that, perfectionism is paralysis, and I have two clients right now that if I wasn't on them, pushing them to get through this perfectionism of how they look on camera or how this is or how that is, it's like, and I get it, but it's also like your communication is senior. Your message is senior to how your hair looks that day. Just is, you know?
Yeah, it is a big issue for a lot of people. I had to learn to get over all the fears and my voice doesn't sound good on a podcast and the camera and I can't, I had to wear contact now, wear glasses, like who cares? I'm not really wearing
Okay.
makeup. I mean, I think the message is the most important thing. And I have
Yeah.
a client, a business client who I've been trying to get her to do social media for so long. She finally hired somebody. But I said, you need to be on camera and you need to have your voice. If you're not going to put your face on camera, at least put your voice on camera, put it behind the pictures of whatever you're showing. And it takes her so long to do everything because of this perfectionist thing. And I
Yeah.
said, you're robbing your audience from your wisdom and your brilliance.
That's
And
right.
I don't think people realize the gift that we give when we have something special to share.
Yeah, I went to this conference in October, and it had to do with about speaking. It was learning how to speak, and the guy who was running the conference said, "How many people here are planning on selling their program for under $500?" And a good number of people raised their hand. And how many people here are planning on selling their program for over $1,000? And there was a smaller group, and he said, "Okay, the under $500, raise your hands again." He said, "Look around." He's like, "What do you guys see?" And it was like all women. And he's like, the group that's over $1,000, let's raise their hand. All men. He's like, this is the difference. He's like, I could have a woman in the audience right now. She could have 3 degrees. She could be certified. She could be the most capable person in the world, and she'll charge under $500. The man watched a few YouTube videos, and he's like ready to roll. You know what I mean? So his point was to knock off the perfectionism and the self worth, because if you can help somebody do something, you're an expert. That's it.
Mhm.
There was no like degrees to be a mom. Okay, we learn and go. You observe, you're aware, you can be an expert, you can help somebody, you can teach somebody. And that value is like, really, that's why I go, it's how you're going to impact change.
Mhm.
Be a leader, stand up, communicate, help. I don't care if it's just one little thing you're helping with, do
Yeah.
it.
And
Yeah.
build along the way. I think that's the other thing is people expect to know it all right out of the gate. And
Yes.
it's by doing and reflecting that you learn. And I say this about dating as well. Like all my clients who are dating, it's like, oh, I have to prepare a little more before I'm ready. And I have to take, just I have to be more successful, more interesting, more. And I'm like, you're already interesting. Like this
Yeah.
one client I have is in sales and he says, I'm not that interesting. I said, no, your conversations online are boring, but you're in sales. You know
Mm,
how to do cold calling. That's what dating is. It's
right.
cold
Right.
calling. You're saying to people, so how do you like living in Florida? Like that is not interesting. I said, no
Right.
geography. You cannot talk about geography anymore. Like every conversation was about where do you live? Why do you live there? Not even why, the none of the why
Oh,
questions. Those would be
yeah, wise would be
interesting.
better. Right.
Right. So it's like we have it within us, but we don't see it and we don't access it because we think we're not enough. And that not enough thing is a big issue for people for sure.
I get
Uh,
it. I get it.
yeah, I get it too. Look, I
Yeah.
was petrified every single step of the way. I was never an in front of the camera person. I never got on a mic. I was married to that guy. He was the performer. I was behind the scenes writing the comedy. It's very different. And then now, if I don't get in front of a camera, I don't have a career. So how do you get known? Right?
Yeah, I mean, and one thing I tell my clients to do as a successful tip is like just start helping somebody. Don't worry about the camera now. Just go help somebody and get that confidence that you can do it. So I had one girl, I just did a retreat on how to build your own online course. Okay. And so literally we did 3 weeks before, we went away, we filmed everything. I mean, I had 140 videos filmed in one day. It was crazy.
Wow.
And then we edited it all, and then they came back, and now we're building the funnel to it. But when she was starting to build her course, she's like, well, I mean, this is kind of new. I haven't really helped anybody yet. Why am I doing a course? I said, go coach somebody. And she did. She took the assignment. She just put out something. She coached 3 people for free. She had so much validation of what she knew and how she could help, that all of a sudden she was seeing herself on camera. All of a sudden she felt like she had something to say, and it
Mm.
was very, very cute. So I say that to people as successful actors: just go do, just just start doing it,
Yep, just do it.
Yeah,
Nike
just do
had it
it.
right. So Jenna, what is the future plan for you? You're a future focused person.
Yes, yes. Well, that's twofold. So, as far as the business is concerned, really what I'm doing is, yes, I'm leading about 6 to 8 retreats a year. And I have my own online courses and doing podcasts and communicating. But really, what I'm doing is I'm creating a platform for other leaders to do their own retreat. So if you wanted to do a retreat, my company and team would put it all together, and then we would rev share on a retreat, because I want to create a safe platform where people can do retreats or do events or do things like that. So it's taking a bit of my producerial skills, like putting that retreat together I did last month. I mean, it was like bada bing, bada boom. It's just like, I love it. It's very natural to me. I have the art of organization, it's like, so I love that aspect of it and creating experiences for others. So the future is to create a platform so I can get many leaders out there communicating and have that be global. And personally, it ties in with the viewpoint that if I can have this emergence of leaders and even more leaders and female leaders and take responsibility for a group of people, because there's 8 billion of us on this planet. So if we can get many leaders taking responsibility for this group and someone taking responsibility for that group, that's sort of my big goal. How do we just really grab those who are falling down and pick them up and help them and inspire them to be a better version of themselves, or really help others. And I feel like the trickle effect will happen, when you drop something in water and it just trickles out. So that's my big game. That's the message.
I love it. All right, we're gonna head into the lightning round. Are you ready?
Oh, right. Okay. Yes.
Quick answers. Fill in the blank. I used to think I wasn't blank enough.
Soft enough.
Tell me more about that, even though this is the lightning round.
um, I was always criticized for being too strong, too forceful, too much of a leader, spoke my mind. And so I used to think I wasn't soft enough, make myself less or likable.
Okay. What was the number one thing holding you back from becoming a woman of value?
Self-confidence, to set out to do a goal and then to do it. And even though I've achieved a lot, it just in sort of this new life, this 50 plus life, just having the confidence to move forward.
Yeah, when you are recreating and you've never done it before, there's this like learning period where it can feel uncomfortable because you don't yet have the competency. And then you're there because you're not just sitting on your ass waiting.
That's right. And to do it again, a bit older, and to have the energy for it. And menopause hasn't always been easy for me. So dealing with that and, getting through and having the energy for it. Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're used to having such high energy.
Yes.
Well, there is life after menopause. I can attest
Yes.
to that.
Okay, good.
I have a lot of energy.
I'm getting through. Yeah.
Yes. What is the best advice that you can give to a woman who wants to become more empowered?
I said it a little bit earlier, but it's like, if you can help one person, then you're expert enough to help many.
Mm.
So just start.
I love it. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Don't do drugs. Um, um, yeah, it was, don't worry about what others thought, and really don't do drugs. It was pretty bad in my 20s. While I was very successful, it was a lot of loss and upset in that area.
So was that like a numbing kind of thing with the drugs? What was
No, it was
the
very social. It was social. I was in Hollywood. The first TV show I worked on was with Don Johnson, and he was wild and crazy and, all that. And that was the environment. And being raised in the music industry in Marin County, which was like, Janis Joplin lived down the street. Steve Perry from Journey was my neighbor. Like, it was just the environment lent itself. I lived in a very affluent area where it was okay to do drugs. And I just felt like I had a lot of opportunities that I missed out on. Even though on paper it looks great to others, I just know for my own personal goals, I would have been able to go much further and not have and the drug taking was always very social, but it made me very insecure and very introverted, even though I would do a drug that would make me seem like I was extroverted, it just was not wasted time, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think a lot of people socially will drink or do drugs because it helps them to feel less intimidated or just it helps them be more visible, I think, you know.
And I always had a lot of energy, and it was like I liked doing drugs with people because it made others have more energy that they could actually keep up with me. So
Mm.
it was almost like a different thing. It wasn't trying to get me out, but it was like, oh, okay, now you guys are more fun. Come on. And so I'd be an instigator of like, let's go do this and let's go out and let's.
Another way of
Yeah.
uplifting others, but in an unhealthy
In
way.
in a synthetic, weird, awful way.
You're
Yes.
right. What is something that people often get wrong about you?
They think I'm tough with them. They'll think that my motives are wrong, even though I might coach toughly. It's it's just it hurts my feelings more than anything, or that I'm not trying to help, that I'm trying to tear down.
Hmm.
And really that only comes from a few, and that really comes from people who are just wrestling with something else that absolutely has nothing to do with me. And I just got it wrong out of the gate. I probably needed to like take it down, slow it down a little bit, just to hit them right where they were and then bring them up. I kind of came in a little too fast or hot and heavy.
Yeah, I've definitely done that too. I
Yeah.
think, you know, we want change so badly for somebody that sometimes we'll be like, come on, you can do this. And they're like, I am so nowhere near this point and you're pushing too hard. One of the things I tell clients when I start is that I will always push you out of your comfort zone, but never to the point where you feel like you're walking like on a trapeze without a net, because it's got to have their buy-in. They have to design and co-create the change with me, or it's not going to work. And it takes skill and it takes a lot of patience to meet people where they are, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, just real quick, 30-second story. When in the recent retreat, I had them, they had to get up and do their elevator pitch for their course. Now, there was no training on this. I gave them 5 things they needed to put in their elevator pitch, and they needed to just go. And there was this one woman who did it, and it wasn't very good. And I was critiquing everybody, and I said, okay, cool. So we missed this point. Let's work on this a little. Let's do that, and then we can restructure it. And it just turned something on for her where she was like, I feel like you are just critical of me and taking me down and blah blah. I said, okay, good, stop. You're going to do it again. No, you're going to do it again. You're going to put these 5 things in there. And I backed the gradient down. I said, okay, you're going to do it like this. And she's like, no. And I said, start. And she did it and she killed it. It was so good that everyone stood up and started clapping. And it was not a sympathy clap. Like literally, she killed it. It was awesome. And then she just, crying and smiling. And I was like, at that moment, I knew I could push her to that point because I know how smart she was and how able she was, and she got the product. So it is that fine tuning. But I was like, anyways, sometimes people think I'm a little pushy.
Right. But again, that was her. There's something in her that doesn't want to be criticized because she takes it to heart and then
Yeah.
shuts down. So you were not letting her shut down, which is good. And you believed in
Yep.
her, which is ultimately the point, right? That you
Yes,
knew there was brilliance in there.
totally. And now she's doing social media videos, which she wasn't doing. And now she's on LinkedIn and getting like 1,000 followers all of a sudden from one newsletter. I mean, it's beautiful,
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And finally, Jenna, how would you like to be remembered?
As the one who helped them. I really like it when people say, wow, you helped me so much and my life has changed.
Mm, the best. Yeah, I mean, if we can all do that, what a world this would be, right?
Yeah, it's what we gotta go for, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jenna, I think you have a giveaway for our audience, a leader builder. Do you want to
I
talk a little bit
do.
about that?
Yeah, it's leadwithjenna.com, and it just takes someone through clarity of their goals and their purpose all the way to how do they communicate to an audience. It kind of goes over some brand and some style and some niche to look at, and it gives some examples. But it's enough that would give someone, the realization of what is my goal really? Because most people operate on purpose. They think their purpose is their goal. Like they might say, my goal is I want to help. Well, that's a purpose, but what is actually the goal? So it goes into that. And then and then it starts taking them through how you carve your message and your buttons and what is branding and style and niche and all that. So that it's just some basics that people can have to really start building an audience.
That sounds really valuable. And if you could give us your website, and all the other links will
Yeah,
be in the show notes.
sure. So it's jennacapozzi.com, which spelling Capozzi might be interesting for some, but it's Capozzi. So it's one P, two Z's. It's Italian. It means strong head. So
Ah.
jennacapozzi.com. Yep. Very fitting for someone like me.
So thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation. Great energy, really important conversation, because I think so many people don't believe they're leaders, just like I used to not believe I was. And I think once you step into your leadership, there's amazing amount of work you can do, influence you can have, and reach higher potential, because so many of us are underperforming and there's just so much more to go. So I love your mission. I love what you're doing in the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody for listening. If you love our show, please give us a high rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I think Spotify is now doing some rating and review, but it's not going over so well. But we're on every platform. And as always, just be a woman of value. If you would like to step more fully into your value, grab a free copy of The Ultimate Guide to Becoming a Woman of Value on my website, thewomanofvalue.com. Just click the link at the top of the homepage. And if you haven't already done so, be sure to click the subscribe button in your listening app. And if there's something in this episode that inspired you, please share it with others, because the more we share these inspirational stories, the more women of value we will have in this world. I'll see you next time.